I still remember the day the humans arrived at Station Kelvor 9 like it was yesterday. Though by our standards, that was approximately 4 orbital cycles ago. My name is Threxus, and I serve as the diplomatic liaison for the Galactic Commerce Federation. I have seen countless species pass through these corridors, primate derivatives, insectoid collectives, gaseous sentients that communicate through color shifts, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for humanity. The first human to step off their transport vessel was a woman named Captain Maya Brooks. She stood at roughly 1.7 meters tall, which by galactic standards made her laughably small. Her skin was this peculiar shade of brown, darker than most species we had encountered from similar atmospheric planets. She wore what they called a uniform, some sort of blue and gray combination that looked far too casual for first contact protocols. "Greetings," she said, extending one of her 5-fingered appendages toward me. "Captain Maya Brooks, representing the United Earth Coalition. We come in peace and trade." I stared at her hand for a good 10 seconds before my translator unit kicked in and explained this bizarre ritual called a handshake. Reluctantly, I extended my own manipulator, which had 3 digits instead of 5, and touched her palm. The warmth was startling. Most species in the Federation ran cold-blooded or maintained stable temperatures through technological means. These humans were like little furnaces. "Welcome to Kelvor 9, I responded, trying to maintain my professional demeanor despite the uncomfortable heat radiating from her grip. "I am Threxus of the Yulani Collective. We have reviewed your preliminary documentation and must say we are curious about what Earth might offer the greater galactic marketplace." She smiled at that, revealing rows of flat teeth with pronounced canines. Predator teeth. That should have been my first warning. "Oh, I think you will be very interested in what we bring to the table," she said with a tone that I would later learn was called confidence. Some might even say arrogance. The conference chamber where we held our initial meetings was impressive by anyone's standards. Vaulted ceilings stretched 15 meters high, and the walls were lined with viewing screens displaying various star systems under Federation protection. Around the circular table sat representatives from 7 major species. There was Kulnax of the Bravandi, a 4-armed giant whose people controlled most of the mining operations in the Outer Rim. Beside him sat Inquisitor Velma, a Sarkonian whose crystalline exoskeleton refracted light in unsettling ways. The Sarkonian Empire had the most powerful military fleet in known space. Then there were the Kalari twins, Pip and Pop, though telling them apart was impossible since their gelatinous forms shifted constantly. They represented the banking cartel. We also had Ambassador Thorvik, a Hreni whose people were master engineers. And finally, there was me, representing the commercial interests of the entire Federation. Captain Brooks entered with 3 other humans. One was a man named David Park, their head of trade negotiations. Another was Lisa Yamamoto, apparently their culinary specialist, which seemed like an odd position for a first contact scenario. The third was Marcus Okonkwo, their security chief, a massive human who stood nearly 2 meters tall with shoulders that seemed broader than some cargo containers. "Please, be seated." I gestured to the chairs we had prepared, though I noticed immediately they were too small for the security chief. He wedged himself in anyway without complaint. Kulnax was the first to speak. His voice rumbled like tectonic plates grinding together. "So, humans, your application to join the Federation markets has been reviewed. Your technology is primitive. Your military capacity is laughable. Your planets have barely achieved Type 1 civilization status. Tell us, what exactly do you think you can offer that would interest any of us?" I winced internally. Kulnax was never known for his diplomacy, but this was harsh even by his standards. Captain Brooks did not flinch. Instead, that smile widened. "Well, Ambassador Konix, I appreciate your directness. You are right that our weapons cannot match yours. Our ships are slower. Our computational systems are generations behind. But there is one thing. One very particular thing that we excel at better than any species we have encountered so far." "And what might that be?" Velma asked, her voice like wind chimes made of glass shards. "We are very, very good at eating," Brooks said. The silence that followed was profound. Then Pip, or possibly Pop, began making a sound their species used for laughter. Soon the entire table was expressing various forms of amusement. Even I had to suppress what might be considered a chuckle. "Eating?" Kulnax repeated, his forearms gesturing wildly. "You come to the greatest commercial alliance in galactic history, and your contribution is that you are good at consuming food. Every species eats. It is a biological necessity." David Park leaned forward. "Not like we do. See, humans are what you might call apex persistence predators from a death world. Earth is classified as a Class 7 hazard planet, right?" Thorvik nodded slowly. "That is correct. The classification means your world is considered exceptionally dangerous. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, aggressive microbial life, volatile weather patterns, and an abundance of predatory megafauna. Exactly, Park continued. Now, most species evolve in relatively stable environments. Your foods are simple. Your proteins are manufactured or harvested from docile livestock. You have flavor, sure, but you do not have what we call cuisine. This is absurd, Velma interjected. You are wasting our time with discussions of food preparation. We have trading routes to establish, resource allocations to negotiate. That was when Lisa Yamamoto stood up. She was perhaps the smallest human in the room, barely reaching 1.6 meters, with silver streaks running through her dark hair. But when she spoke, something in her tone made everyone pay attention. Tell me something, Ambassador Velma. What is the most dangerous creature on your homeworld? Velma tilted her head, light scattering across her faceted exterior. The Krashen stalkers. They are ambush predators, roughly 3 meters in length, with acidic venom and razor-sharp talons. They are responsible for hundreds of deaths annually despite our advanced civilization. And do you eat them? Lisa asked simply. Eat them? Are you insane? Their flesh is toxic. Their very blood would dissolve most organic compounds. They are apex predators. They eat us. Lisa nodded slowly. Right. See, on Earth we have hundreds of apex predators. Creatures that evolved specifically to kill and consume other animals, including us. And you know what we did? We ate them first. We ate them better. We domesticated. We drove others to extinction through overhunting. We turned the food chain into a food suggestion. I felt my throat sacs contract involuntarily. This was disturbing on several levels. You are exaggerating, Kulnax rumbled, though he sounded less certain than before. Marcus Okonkwo spoke for the first time, his voice deep and measured. 3 months ago we made contact with a mining operation in the Telvari sector. You know the place. The one with those massive serpent creatures that had been attacking your workers? Thorvik's antennae straightened. The Vex serpents. Yes, we lost 17 workers to those beasts before we abandoned the operation. Each one was 12 meters long with hide tough enough to deflect plasma bolts. Absolutely vicious. Had been attacking, Marcus repeated. Past tense. We helped with your little pest problem. How? I heard myself ask. Captain Brooks reached into a container they had brought and pulled out a sealed package. We caught 3 of them, studied them, analyzed their biochemistry. Then we cooked them. Lisa, would you like to explain the preparation? Lisa practically glowed with enthusiasm. The hide was indeed tough, but a pressure cooker solved that problem. The meat underneath was actually quite delicate, almost like a cross between what you would call fish and poultry. We marinated it in citrus-based acids to break down the proteins, added some complementary spices, garlic, ginger, lemongrass. Then we grilled it over open flame. The result was absolutely spectacular. She opened the container. The smell that wafted out was like nothing I had ever encountered. It was rich, complex, with layers of aroma that seemed to trigger responses in my brain I did not know existed. My mouth, if you could call it that, began producing excess saliva. This is Vex serpent? Velma asked, her voice losing its sharp edge. Marinated, grilled and served with a side of roasted root vegetables from Earth and a reduction sauce made from the creature's own rendered fat. Lisa confirmed. We call it serpent kebabs. Would anyone like to try? The next hour fundamentally changed everything I thought I knew about humans and perhaps about the nature of predation itself. Lisa distributed small portions to each of us, explaining that she had verified the biochemical compatibility for each species present. As I placed the small piece of grilled Vex serpent into my mouth, I experienced something transcendent. The flavor was incredible. The texture was perfect, firm but tender. The spices created a sensation of warmth that spread through my entire body. But more than that, there was something primal about the act. The Vex serpents had been terror incarnate for mining operations across 3 sectors, and here I was eating one, consuming it, reducing it from apex predator to appetizer. Kulnax, who had been the most skeptical, reached for a second piece before he had finished the first. This is remarkable. The flavor profile is unlike anything in our culinary databases. And you say this creature was actively hunting your people? Oh yeah, Marcus confirmed. Killed 2 of our scouts before we figured out their attack patterns. Then we killed 12 of them. 8, 9. The other 3 we shipped back to Earth for our zoological program. Peep and Pop were making excited burbling sounds, their forms oscillating rapidly. Through their translator they said, the economic implications are staggering. There are hundreds of worlds abandoned due to hostile wildlife. If humans can neutralize these threats, and then monetize them through food production, the resource potential is enormous. Thorvik was examining the empty container with his sensory apparatus. The preparation method suggests significant technological sophistication in food sciences. This is not simple roasting over fires. This required understanding of molecular gastronomy, protein denaturation, flavor compound interactions. Cooking, Lisa said with a shrug, is just chemistry you can eat, and humans have been perfecting it for roughly 300,000 years. We went from raw meat to molecular gastronomy. We have cuisines numbering in the thousands, preparation techniques that vary by region, culture, even individual preference. Food is not just sustenance for us. It is art, tradition, science, and passion all combined. Captain Brooks seized the moment. So here is our proposal. You have worlds you cannot colonize because of dangerous fauna. You have space stations that deal with pest species you cannot eradicate. You have entire ecosystems that are off limits because something in the food chain is too aggressive. Give us access to those problems. We will turn your nightmares into delicacies. We will establish restaurants, food processing facilities, culinary schools. We will teach other species how to look at their predators not as threats but as ingredients. This is madness, Velma said, but her tone had shifted. She was considering it. You are proposing weaponizing cuisine. We are proposing that humanity's greatest skill, the ability to eat anything that does not eat us first, and sometimes even the things that do, becomes our primary trade offering. Think about it. Every species here has something they fear, something they avoid, something that makes them abandon perfectly good territory. We do not fear those things. We salivate at them. I found myself nodding along. The more she spoke, the more sense it made in a completely insane way. Humans were not impressive in the traditional metrics we use to evaluate species. They were not particularly strong, fast, or technologically advanced, but they had survived on a world that actively tried to kill them by becoming the most efficient, most creative, most determined predators their planet had ever produced. And then they turned that predation into culture. Kolnax slammed one of his massive fists on the table, making everyone jump. I want exclusive distribution rights to human cuisine in the mining sectors. The morale boost alone would increase productivity by 20%. My workers need this. The Sarkonian military would pay handsomely for field rations that actually taste good, Vilma added. Our current nutrition paste is functional but despised universally. The calorie twins were already calculating profit margins, their form splitting and recombining as they process data. We can provide financing for the infrastructure, restaurant chains, processing facilities, supply logistics. The return on investment could be astronomical if marketed correctly. Thorvik was more cautious. We would need to establish safety protocols, ensure that human food preparation does not introduce contaminants to other species. But yes, the engineering challenges alone would provide decades of interesting work. I realized that in the span of 1 hour, humanity had gone from being a curiosity, a footnote in Federation records, to potentially one of the most valuable commercial partners we had ever encountered. And all because they were good at cooking things that wanted to kill them. Captain Brooks smiled that predator smile again. Gentlemen, ladies, and gelatinous entities, I think we have the foundation for a very profitable partnership. But before we discuss contracts and territories, I should mention one more thing. What is that? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. The Vex serpent is delicious, sure. But it is just an appetizer compared to what we can do with proper apex predators. We brought samples of dishes prepared from creatures across multiple danger classifications, Earth cuisine, Federation pest species, even some experimental preparations from worlds we have not visited yet, based on biochemical analysis. So, who is hungry? Marcus began unpacking containers, each one labeled with species names. I recognized creatures that had caused evacuations, military interventions, and territorial abandonments, and the humans had turned them all into food. As the tasting began, I caught Captain Brooks watching us all with an expression I would later understand as satisfaction mixed with amusement. She leaned over and whispered, "You know, Ambassador Threxus, this is not even our best work. Wait until you try what we can do with your apex predators." I felt a shiver run through my body, though whether it was fear or anticipation, I honestly could not tell. Perhaps it was both, because in that moment, I realized that humanity had just shown the Galactic Federation something we had forgotten in our millennia of civilization and safety, that everything, absolutely everything, could be food if you were brave enough and creative enough, and humans were very, very brave and extremely creative. The meeting that was supposed to last 2 hours stretched into 6. By the end, we had drafted preliminary agreements for human culinary operations in 17 different sectors, established a task force to identify high-priority dangerous species for harvesting, and scheduled follow-up sessions to discuss expansion into luxury dining experiences. As the representatives filed out, most of them carrying containers of leftover samples, I remained seated, trying to process what had just occurred. Lisa approached me with another small container. Ambassador Threxis, I noticed you particularly enjoyed the serpent kebabs. I prepared something special for you. This is from a creature on my homeworld, Japan specifically. We call it fugu, or pufferfish. It is highly toxic if prepared incorrectly. One wrong cut and the poison can kill you in minutes. But when prepared properly by a trained chef, it is considered one of the greatest delicacies on earth. I stared at the delicate slices of pale flesh arranged artfully in the container. You are giving me something that could kill me? She smiled warmly. I am giving you something that challenged us for centuries. Something that demanded respect, skill, and mastery. The fact that it could kill you is what makes it special. It means the chef cared enough to do it right. That is what human cuisine is really about. Transforming danger into delight. I accepted the container with trembling manipulators. Your species is absolutely terrifying, you know that. Oh, we know, she said with a laugh. But we are also delicious. Or rather, what we make is delicious. Wait until you meet our bakers. They make bread that people would literally kill for. Wars have been fought over recipes. After she left, I sat alone in the conference chamber, holding a container of potentially lethal fish, prepared by a species that thought eating dangerous animals was not just normal, but entertaining. I thought about the implications of what we had agreed to. The Federation had just invited humanity to do what they did best: hunt, kill, and eat their way across the galaxy, and somehow that seemed like exactly what we needed. I took a piece of the fugu and placed it carefully in my mouth. The flavor was subtle, clean, with a slight sweetness and a texture unlike anything I had experienced. As I savored it, I realized I was smiling. Humanity had arrived, and they had brought their appetites with them. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after that initial meeting, I found myself standing in what humans called a kitchen aboard their flagship vessel, the Persistence. The irony of that name was not lost on me after learning more about human history. They had named their primary diplomatic ship after their defining characteristic, the ability to just keep going no matter what tried to stop them. The kitchen, or as Lisa insisted on calling it, the galley, was controlled chaos. Humans moved with practiced efficiency around stations equipped with devices whose purposes I was still learning. There were ovens, grills, fryers, steamers, sous vide machines, and something called a wok that apparently required actual fire, which seemed unnecessarily dangerous on a spacecraft. Ambassador Threxis, perfect timing, Lisa called out, waving a large metal utensil at me. I had learned this was called a spatula. We are doing final preparations for tomorrow's demonstration. Come taste this, and tell me if the heat level is appropriate for Yulani physiology. She thrust a small plate toward me containing what looked like chunks of meat in a dark red sauce. The aroma was intense, sharp, and complex, with underlying notes that made my sensory organs tingle. What is this? I asked cautiously. Braised Korthak ribs in a spicy reduction sauce, she said proudly. The Korthak are those armored predators from the jungle moon of Selvaris 4. The ones that had been attacking the Bravandi research outpost, the one that killed 32 researchers before the facility was abandoned. I said, my voice climbing an octave. Those Korthak? Yep. Turns out their meat is incredibly rich. Almost like what we would call short ribs on Earth. The armored plating is useless for eating, obviously, but underneath you have these beautiful strips of dark meat that respond wonderfully to slow braising. I cooked this for 8 hours in a mixture of their own bone broth, fermented bean paste, rice wine, and about 15 different aromatics. I looked at the plate with a mixture of fear and curiosity that had become my default state around human food. Slowly, I picked up one of the pieces and took a bite. The meat fell apart in my mouth, tender and succulent. The sauce had layers upon layers of flavor, sweet, savory, spicy, sour, all dancing together in perfect harmony. The heat built gradually, warming my system without overwhelming it. This is extraordinary, I managed to say after swallowing. The creature that terrorized an entire research facility for 6 months is now the most delicious thing I have eaten this week. Lisa beamed. Wait until you see what Marcus did with the bones. He made a stock that we are turning into ramen broth, but that is for day 3 of the demonstration. Tomorrow we are starting with the main event. The main event, I repeated, feeling my throat sacs contract nervously. You mean the Ravagers? The Ravagers, Captain Brooks announced, entering the galley with her usual confident stride. She had changed from her uniform into what she called casual wear, though it still looked remarkably put together. Are we ready to cook the galaxy's most feared apex predator? The Ravagers were legendary, and not in a good way. They were massive creatures averaging 4 meters at the shoulder, with 6 legs, armored hide, retractable claws that could shred starship hulls, and a disposition that made them attack anything that moved. They had evolved on Krell 9, a planet so hostile that even the Sarkonian military had classified it as unsuitable for any form of colonization. The Ravagers were not just predators. They were geological forces that happened to be alive. They had no natural predators. They feared nothing. They had spread across 17 star systems by stowing away on cargo ships and had caused billions in damages. Hundreds of hunting parties had been sent to eradicate them over the decades. Most did not return, and tomorrow humanity was going to cook one. The specimen arrived this morning, Marcus said, joining us. He was wearing an apron that said Grill Sergeant in large letters, which I had learned was a human attempt at wordplay. Prime adult female, approximately 600 kilograms. We have her in stasis in Cargo Bay 3. How did you even catch it? I asked, genuinely curious. The last major Ravager hunt had involved a full Sarkonian battlecruiser and had still resulted in the loss of 40 soldiers before they managed to kill just one, carefully, Marcus said with a slight smile. Actually, we used a technique from Earth called persistence hunting. See, Ravagers are sprinters. They are built for explosive power and short chases. But humans, we evolved as endurance runners. We can maintain a steady pace for hours, sometimes days, so we just followed this one. Every time it attacked, we dodged or blocked, then kept following. We did not try to fight it. We just did not stop. For how long? I asked. 11 hours, he said casually, as if this was completely normal. Eventually its muscles started failing from lactic acid buildup. It could barely stand. Then we tranquilized it and brought it aboard. Lisa was checking something on a datapad. The butchering process took another 6 hours. The hide alone required diamond-tipped cutting tools. But underneath, the meat quality is exceptional. Marbling that would make a Wagyu cow jealous. The muscle density suggests incredible flavor potential. You were genuinely excited about this, I observed. Are you kidding? Lisa's eyes were practically glowing. Do you know how rare it is to work with a completely novel protein source, especially one this challenging? This is like being asked to prepare the first mammoth after hunting it with stone tools. This is culinary history. Captain Brooks pulled up a holographic display showing the planned demonstration. Tomorrow we are hosting representatives from 43 different species. The Sarkonian Empire is sending Inquisitor Velma plus their High Command's Quartermaster Corps. The Bravandi Mining Collective is bringing their entire board of directors. Even the Hreni Engineering Guild is attending, and they barely eat at all. They eat maintenance paste through osmosis, I noted. Why would they care about this? Because Thorvik told them about the temperature control systems we are installing in our cooking equipment, Brooks explained. Apparently our ability to maintain precise thermal regulation while working with open flames has implications for their reactor designs. We are accidentally innovating in their field by trying to make better ovens. The next morning I stood in the observation deck overlooking the main hangar bay, which had been converted into what Lisa called a demonstration kitchen. Below, arranged in a semicircle, were seating areas for the various delegates. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. In the center of the space stood what could only be described as a stage, complete with multiple cooking stations, overhead cameras projecting to massive view screens, and the piece de resistance, the Ravager, laid out on a specialized preparation table that had required engineering modifications to support its weight. Even in death and properly butchered, the creature was imposing. Its hide had been removed and displayed on one wall, showing the scars of countless battles. The meat had been sectioned into various cuts, each one labeled and arranged with almost surgical precision. Lisa stood beside the table wearing chef whites, an Earth tradition that seemed oddly formal for someone about to cook. Beside her were 3 other human chefs who had been brought specifically for this demonstration. There was Thomas McKinley, apparently a master of smoking and barbecue techniques. Next to him stood Priya Sharma, whose specialty was something called fusion cuisine. And finally there was Jean-Baptiste Laurent, who Lisa had introduced as a classically trained chef from Earth's French tradition. Captain Brooks stepped forward to address the assembled delegates. Distinguished guests, thank you for joining us today. What you are about to witness is not just a cooking demonstration, it is a statement of intent. For too long, the species of this federation have lived in fear of creatures like the Ravager. You have abandoned worlds, rerouted shipping lanes, lost lives and resources to these apex predators. Today we show you another way. She gestured to the Ravager. This creature has killed over 200 sentient beings across 17 star systems. It has caused an estimated 4 billion credits in property damage. It is considered by your military experts to be one of the most dangerous life forms in known space, and today we are going to turn it into lunch. Kolnak stood up from his seat, his forearms gesturing dramatically. Captain Brooks, with all respect, we have all tasted your skills over the past months. We have seen you transform pest species into delicacies. But the Ravager is different. This is not some oversized serpent or territorial predator. This is a force of nature. Surely even you cannot make this palatable. Lisa smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression that reminded everyone that humans were also apex predators, just with better public relations. Ambassador Konax, on Earth we have a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And also, the better they taste. Thomas, would you like to start? Thomas stepped forward to the first cooking station. His accent was thick, from a place on Earth called Texas. Yes, ma'am. Now, folks, back home we have a tradition called barbecue. Low and slow cooking over wood smoke. I have taken a section of the Ravager's shoulder, what we would call the brisket cut, and I have been smoking it for the past 14 hours over cherry wood at exactly 90 degrees Celsius. He unveiled a massive section of meat that had turned a deep mahogany color. The smell that wafted up was incredible, smoky and rich with an underlying sweetness. He sliced into it, and the meat pulled apart in perfect tender strands. The fat content in this cut is around 30%, Thomas explained, which is perfect for long, slow cooking. The collagen breaks down into gelatin, the fat renders and bastes the meat from the inside, and the smoke penetrates deep, creating this bark on the outside that is just packed with flavor. He prepared small samples for distribution. When mine arrived, I hesitated only a moment before tasting. The meat was so tender it dissolved on my tongue. The smoke flavor was present, but not overwhelming, complementing the natural richness of the protein. The bark, as Thomas called it, had a slight crispness that contrasted beautifully with the soft interior. Around the observation deck, I could hear various sounds of approval from the different species. Even Velma, whose kind rarely showed emotion, seemed to be experiencing something profound. Priya stepped forward next. While Thomas was working with traditional Earth techniques, I wanted to explore fusion concepts. The Ravager's loin section reminded me of tuna, actually. Dense, meaty, with a clean flavor profile, so I prepared it 3 ways: as a tartare with citrus and herbs, as a seared steak with a pan sauce, and as a curry using spices from 6 different planets including Earth. She began plating with artistic precision. Each dish was a work of visual art, as much as culinary creation. The tartare was arranged in a perfect circle, garnished with microgreens and edible flowers. The seared steak was crusted with what looked like seeds and rested in a glossy sauce. The curry was served in a traditional earth bowl with aromatic steam rising from golden liquid. The key to fusion cuisine, Priya explained as samples were distributed, is respecting each ingredient while finding harmonies between different culinary traditions. The Ravager's meat is lean and flavorful, similar to game meat on Earth. It pairs beautifully with bold spices but can also handle delicate preparations. I tried the tartare first. The raw meat was surprisingly delicate, with the citrus and herbs brightening the natural flavor. The seared steak was perfect, with a caramelized crust giving way to tender, juicy meat inside. But the curry was something else entirely. The spices from multiple worlds created a flavor profile that was simultaneously familiar and alien, comfortable yet adventurous. Jean-Baptiste was last. He spoke with a refined accent, each word precisely enunciated. My colleagues have shown you innovation and tradition. I will show you elevation. The Ravager's tenderloin is one of the finest cuts of meat I have worked with in my 30-year career. It requires minimal intervention, just perfect execution. He demonstrated a technique he called sous vide, where the meat was sealed in a vacuum bag and cooked in precisely temperature-controlled water. 54.5 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, he explained. This brings the entire cut to perfect medium rare while maintaining moisture and tenderness. Then a quick sear in a screaming hot pan to develop the Maillard reaction, creating those complex flavors and aromas. He plated the meat with what he called classical accompaniments: roasted root vegetables, a red wine reduction sauce, and something called Duchess potatoes. The presentation was elegant, almost formal. When I tasted this preparation, I understood why Jean-Baptiste had such confidence. The meat was perfection. Every fiber was tender, the flavor was pure and concentrated, and the accompaniments enhanced rather than masked the natural qualities of the protein. But Lisa had not cooked yet. She stood at the final station, which had been set up with equipment I did not recognize. Captain Brooks joined her. Our final preparation, Brooks announced, is something special. Lisa's expression was serious now. Everything you have tasted today has been delicious, yes, but it has also been safe. Familiar cooking methods applied to an unfamiliar ingredient. For my preparation, I want to honor what the Ravager was, an apex predator. Something dangerous, something that commanded respect and fear. She unveiled a large pot containing dark liquid that seemed to shimmer. This is the Ravager's own blood, reduced and clarified into a consommé. In human cuisine, we have traditions of using every part of an animal, nose to tail cooking. The blood of predators is particularly prized in many cultures. It is rich in iron, proteins, and carries the essence of the creature's life force. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. This felt different from the other preparations. This felt primal. I have enriched this with bone marrow, herbs that grow on Krell 9, the Ravager's homeworld, and a touch of acid to balance the richness. This is not just food. This is communion. By consuming this, you are taking the Ravager's strength into yourself. You are declaring that you are not prey. You are the top of the food chain. She ladled the dark liquid into small cups. When mine arrived, I stared at it for a long moment. The other preparations had been about transforming the Ravager into something palatable, something civilized. This was about accepting its nature and claiming it. I drank. The flavor was intense, metallic, and rich, but underneath was something else. Something that made my biology respond on a fundamental level. It was nourishment. Yes, but it was also power. It was the acknowledgement that I was consuming something that had once been the most dangerous creature in its ecosystem, and now it was sustaining me. Around the observation deck, I watched as delegates from species across the Federation had similar reactions. Some looked shocked. Others looked enlightened. A few looked like they had just experienced something religious. Kolnak stood slowly. I need to revise my earlier assessment. Humanity is not offering us cuisine. You are offering us dominance. You are teaching us that nothing in this galaxy is too dangerous to consume, too frightening to face, too powerful to overcome. Not exactly, Captain Brooks said. We are teaching you that fear and respect are not the same thing. We respect the Ravager. We respect its power, its evolutionary success, its role in its ecosystem. But we do not fear it, and because we do not fear it, we can engage with it on our terms. We can study it, hunt it, and yes, eat it. Fear is the mind killer, as one of our philosophers said. But appetite is a motivator. Velma stood next, her crystalline form refracting the light in agitated patterns. The Sarkonian Empire would like to commission human hunting teams immediately. We have a list of 17 species across our territories that have proven problematic. We want them eliminated and processed for military rations. Name your price. The Bravandi Collective seconds this motion, Kolnax added. Mining operations alone could benefit from at least 30 different dangerous species being converted to nutritional resources. Peep and Pop are vibrating with excitement. The financial projections are even more favorable than our initial estimates. We project that within 5 years, human cuisine could become the third largest sector in Federation trade behind technology and raw materials. I watched as the humans exchanged glances. They had done it. In 3 months, they had gone from being an unknown curiosity to becoming potentially one of the most influential species in galactic politics, all because they were really good at eating things. Captain Brooks held up her hands for quiet. We appreciate your enthusiasm, and we are certainly ready to discuss contracts and deployments. But I want to make something clear. This is not about extermination. We are not going to hunt species to extinction. Humans learned that lesson the hard way on Earth. Sustainable hunting practices, population management, effort harvesting, these are all part of our proposal. You want to farm Ravagers? Thorvik asked, his antennae quivering with what might have been disbelief. Eventually. Yes, Lisa answered. Not for a few generations, obviously. But the goal is not to eliminate these species. The goal is to establish balanced relationships. Some we hunt, some we farm, some we domesticate. On Earth, our ancestors turned wolves into dogs, wild cattle into livestock, fierce jungle cats into house pets. We can do the same across the galaxy, but better, because we have science to guide us now instead of just trial and error. Marcus pulled up displays showing preliminary plans. We have already identified 3 species that show potential for domestication. The Vex serpents are actually quite intelligent and respond well to training. The Korthak form strong pair bonds that could be leveraged, and believe it or not, juvenile Ravagers go through an imprinting phase where they bond with the first large creature they see. We could potentially raise them from eggs. You want to domesticate ravagers? I heard myself say in a voice that was at least 2 octaves higher than normal. We domesticated everything on Earth that was not actively poisonous and even some things that were, Marcus said with a shrug. It is what we do. Humans do not really have natural enemies anymore. We turned all of them into friends, food, or both. The rest of the day was spent in intense negotiations. Contracts were drafted for hunting operations across 40 different worlds. Training programs were established to teach other species human hunting and cooking techniques. Supply chains were planned to distribute this new food source throughout Federation space. As the delegates finally departed, many of them carrying samples of various Ravager preparations, I remained behind with the human team. They were cleaning their equipment and I was struck by how casual they were about what they had just accomplished. You realize you have changed everything, right? I said to Captain Brooks. She smiled tiredly. We just did what humans do, Ambassador. We saw a problem and we ate it. Literally in this case, but it is more than that, I insisted. You have given the Federation something it did not know it needed. The courage to face our nightmares and turn them into resources. You have weaponized appetite. Lisa joined us, wiping down one of her knives with practiced care. It is not about weapons, Ambassador. It is about perspective. Every species in the Federation evolved to avoid danger, which is smart. But humans evolved to embrace it. We ran toward the things that scared us because we were curious about how they tasted. That curiosity, that fearlessness, that refusal to accept that anything was off limits. That is what got us to the top of our food chain, and now we are sharing that gift with you, a gift that comes with restaurant franchises and catering contracts. I noted with what might have been humor. Well, we are still human, Brooks laughed. We need to eat too. Might as well make a profit while we are saving you from your predators. 3 months later I received a message from Kulnax. His mining operation on Telvari 6, the one that had been shut down due to Vex Serpent attacks, was now the most productive facility in the sector. The human hunting teams had cleared the immediate area of threats, and the harvested serpents were being processed into what the miners were calling the best food they had ever tasted. Morale was at an all-time high. Productivity had increased by 47%, and they were requesting additional human culinary staff to handle the demand. Similar reports were coming in from across the Federation. Everywhere humans went, they left full bellies and empty fear responses in their wake. I stood in my office aboard Station Kelvor 9 looking out at the stars, and thinking about what humanity had brought to our civilization. They were not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced, but they had something perhaps more valuable. The ability to look at the universe and see not threats but opportunities, not enemies, but ingredients. My datapad chimed with a new message from Lisa. She was opening her first restaurant on the station, and I was invited to the grand opening. The specialty of the house would be locally sourced cuisine, which meant whatever dangerous species was currently causing problems in the sect. I found myself smiling, an expression I had learned from humans. Before they arrived, the galaxy was divided into safe zones and danger zones. Civilized space and wild space. Now, thanks to humanity and their insatiable appetites, everywhere was potentially a dining room. The humans had not conquered the galaxy with weapons or technology. They had done it with curiosity, courage, and really good seasoning, and somehow that seemed entirely appropriate for a species that had spent 300,000 years proving that everything, absolutely everything, was edible if you cooked it right. I sent my confirmation to Lisa's invitation and made a note to ask if she had any more of that fugu. After all, if I was going to live in this new galaxy that humans were creating, I might as well develop a taste for danger. It was, as they say on Earth, an acquired taste. But then again, so was civilization.